Hey, what's up you guys? Today we're going to be talking about the origin of life. So, first thoughts are probably she's either going to go on a rant about God creating all living things, or I'm going to give you some info about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Not going to do either of those things. Going to mention them, but not either of those. We're going to talk about abiogenesis and the Miller-Urey experiment and conclusions from that and other theories that people have that lead to the origin of life. So, to begin this, the definition of abiogenesis is life came from non-life. Just because there's dead meat laying out, that maggots just appear out of nowhere. That's not how it works. They've done experiments on that a long time ago, proving that rats and maggots don't just appear out of thin air. They're too complex to just burst out of nowhere. So we have to have a starting point, basically, is what they're saying. Now, Charles Darwin is the one who gave us the idea of this starting point, talking about his evolutionary theory. So, he basically have a tree of life, kind of. All comes back to one trunk. So, he said that there is one living cell that we all spread apart from and became our individual complex living organisms. Now, many people do not agree with this theory and don't see enough evidence, but it is likely that we came from smaller organisms or just simpler cells. According to Charles Darwin, in a letter that he wrote to his friend, all you need is a warm little pond that has all the right chemicals. From this, you can have proteins that build up into a living cell, which can be the ancestor that we all come from. Alexander O'Parin wrote a book on the origin of life. Now, he sort of piggybacks off of Charles Darwin's idea of evolution, simply starting from small and ending up to more complex. Now, he outlines this sort of as starting with simple molecules down to molecules of life, now to macromolecules, polymers, metabolic networks, and finally, living cells. In this, he basically explains how he would describe this occurring is in the ocean, which is what he would call a large primordial soup. All these reactions would be going on in the ocean, which would later turn into the molecules of life. Stanley Miller, a grad student at the time, and his professor, Miller-Urey, got together and simulated the ancient water cycle. They did this to test the first two steps, which is simple molecules and molecules of life, on Alexander O'Parin's outline. It is not for certain of what chemicals in the atmosphere or what specifically ancient conditions were like. So this was done to the best of their knowledge, which is far greater than mine. To start their experiment, they had water into their tubing system. Now, the water is supposed to represent ancient ocean water, which the water was slightly boiled to simulate evaporation, which goes on in the water cycle. Now, the gases that they put in there were methane, ammonium, and hydrogen. They used these gases because they believed that there was an abundance of these gases on the ancient Earth. They also added several sampling probes and a condenser, which would be the precipitation aspect of the water cycle. Now, there's one thing missing, and that would be the energy. So sunlight, thermal vents, lava, and lightning are all forms of energy. And this specific experiment was lightning. They added sparks to simulate lightning that would have occurred in ancient times. Now again, this experiment only goes from the foundation of chemistry and simple molecules to making the molecules of life. No further than that. And that is what they did. After 1 week, Miller-Urey found that their water had turned brown. They didn't add anything in the water to make it turn brown. There was actually amino acids forming in this water. Now, later research into this experiment, we know now that they actually found 25 amino acids. Now, there's only, in today's knowledge, there are only 20 amino acids. So these 25 amino acids are from ancient times, and they actually relate back to the latest universal ancestor, which goes back on Charles Darwin's idea of we all came from one organism. Miller-Urey's experiment did prove that you can go from simple molecules to molecules of life. However, the Miller-Urey experiment does not provide enough evidence or test that we came from those simple molecules. It only tests the first two of Alexander Oparin's outline, not the whole thing. So people still believe in, whether it be their own religion or their own research on different scientific theories. One alternative perspective on the origin of life is God's creation of man and all of the animals, and God's creation basically of earth. In the book of Genesis, it explicitly explains that God created heaven and earth. He created the light, he created man, the animals, and later created woman. There's not a full explanation and evidence that stands behind this, only faith. Some people are very religious, some are not. Those who are not can either take a different religious perspective or move on to a more scientific explanation. Now, if they don't believe in Charles Darwin's evolution or the primordial soup or any of these things, there is another explanation called panspermia. Not just about pans and sperms. We didn't mix up sperms to make people. What it means is, in Greek, panspermia literally translates to seeds everywhere. What is being implied is the molecules and building blocks of life began not on Earth. It began elsewhere in the universe. Seems to be a bit of a stretch, seeing as we cannot live outside of our Earth's atmosphere. And it seems to be, as Earth is the only planet right now that holds life. Unless you believe in aliens. I don't know. But the way that they explain panspermia is right before life was created, however you believe it, Earth took a ton of hits from many, 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 many meteor showers. And they believe that life, the building blocks of it at least, were transported off of these meteors from space onto Earth. And that they began to react with each other and form like that once they hit the Earth's surface. But the building blocks of it started off of Earth's surface. I know it seems like a bit of a stretch, but their supporting evidence is that the Earth took, one, a ton of hits from meteors right before life began, and two, that there could possibly be water on Mars. There could possibly be another planet in some other solar system or galaxy or wherever that could have the potential for life. The evidence isn't strong, but it does provide a lot of questioning that can further be researched later on, once we get the technology to do so. To end this video, I'm just going to stop rambling about how life began and all these different theories and just say that there is no foolproof conclusion as to how life began on Earth, or if it did even begin on Earth. So to that, I'm really kind of excited to see people go out and actually try and prove where we came from, because I believe that you can learn a lot from where you came from, just like you can learn a lot from your past and other people's past. Nothing is definite on how life began, but I encourage other people to go out and maybe they could be the ones to have their name next to the origin of life. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye!